everyone. Thanks, Ivy, for the great introduction. So today we're going to talk about requirements handoff and how we collaborate with PM and Dev throughout the product development lifecycle. This is quite an advanced topic, so I've been informed there are some very beginner UX designers in the audience. So please stop me with questions as we go. I prefer to answer them kind of in line with the flow of the presentation. So. All right, so the learning goals for today are, what are requirements, what's the requirements handoff, some of the challenges I've run into working with a product manager and a developer. Then we'll kind of talk about our user-centered design flow as a whole, how we document requirements as we go, and how we package those up really nicely for dev to be able to consume. Then we'll end there. So. Hey, I'm excited to share some of my lessons learned throughout my career. So number one, what are requirements? I really hate the word requirements. It's so vague, it's convoluted. People say one thing, but they're not referring to the thing you're thinking of. So if you can see here, requirements is basically everything. Anything that goes into software development, the business architecture, the user journey map, all their feedback, and epic through user story, user needs, just ideas, questions, yada, yada. So what I want to focus on today in terms of what is a feature package is the prototype elements, towards the end of our UCD flow, and then the user stories. So how are we creating that really nice feature package for a dev to consume, essentially? And then real quick, a requirements handoff is that really nicely documented your UI designs, they're validated, you've prototype tested them, and then you've spec'd up the mocks. They have some red lines where applicable. You're referring to your common components library, and then you're also very clearly detailing out the functionality, like where the UI needs to move and respond to end users. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So we'll just start with a few potential collaboration challenges that I run into. And just to share, the scope, this is my view of the world. It's a very UX-centric view of product development, right? So in the scoping phase, we are a participant. We're not really leading that effort, right? PM kind of leads that effort, but we are a main contributor. User research, that's kind of more something we're leading. Then we get kind of back down to the planning side of things. We're providing the data, but PM is really kind of leading what should be prioritized with your product owner. And then back out to design, that's something we kind of lead again, right? Kind of our main main focus. And then, kind of coming back down to inception, to that handoff to dev. I still kind of think of PM as the main leaders, but of course, again, we're very big contributors to that. So as you can imagine, some relationship challenges can arise. So I want to share a few of the things to look for when you're working with a PM across this life cycle. And I just want to point out that PMs and devs are really great, and we are all human. And this isn't to really knock anyone, but just really think about where might we have challenges and just kind of how to learn to avoid them in the future. But this is all kind of based on my experience. So I want to share, kind of starting in that scoping area, I have had PMs be like, I need all of this in 1 week. And we know that's not a great way to do design, right? We need to go learn about the users. We need to have a collaborative design studio. We need to go prototype test it in the end. So when you're compounding that with like a user population of my size and many different Boeing programs, right, that timeline really does multiply. So it's in our best interest, my best interest, to explain to my product team, what's it going to take? So we'll give you some tools on that. KPI is quite an advanced one, but something, really just kind of keep in mind long term when you're thinking about what does a mature UX practice look like? These are teams that are measuring their success from the beginning. So my team isn't quite this mature. We're still kind of getting there. but it's definitely kind of a red flag to be cognizant of, to desire for your team in the long run, right? That's measuring success. Number 3, something that really bothers me, when your product roadmap is sliced by solution functions, solution ideas, instead of your users' capability. What are we trying to enable in our users, right? So that's things like, I've literally seen these. Mobile design, like what does that even mean? Like the whole app is mobile. Like that's not a feature by itself, right? I'm just poking fun, right? Search page, another example of something that bothers me. I don't like to see product roadmaps coming in sliced by solution. This could be a Liz Junkie thing. I'm not sure. Love to hear maybe from some other PMs at some point, but I really want to see it user-centric, right? I'm a user. I'm trying to do a thing. I'm trying to shop. I'm trying to find some information, right? And another thing that's really funky I've seen from PMs before, defining the user stories in the beginning to try to, I don't know, explain how something should be designed. And again, we want to say, hey, let's start with assumptions, and let's go learn from the users a little bit first, right? Let's go validate the problem, right? That's our job, right? To make sure we go problem first and then solution, and not here's a solution idea, go for it, right? And then a few notes in the user research area, just not having time to participate, right? They are very busy, these PMs, right? So making sure, they're joining a few, or you're recording them for them to watch later, that's always good. And again, not allowing enough time. And then, the curatorialness, that's definitely a personality thing, but, there's a lot of natural overlap with our job in PM, right? In terms of the requirements documentation. So, that's kind of a big focus of my presentation today. On the other hand, our third piece of our team, right, Dev? We can be stretched thin sometimes, right? If we're not allocated to just one product. I typically try to have all my designers just focus on one product. Sometimes that's not possible, right? Sometimes you need to be on a few. And that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign that you have a mature UX practice, enough designers to go around. So definite red flag just to note there. User stories not always detailed as dev needs. That's on us. That's on us, right? Us and PM. If we have missing scenarios, or we just give part of a design, dev is gonna fill in the blanks. I guarantee. And the farther away they live, right, the harder it is to correct that, right? And I am specifically talking about if you have contractor developers in Russia, India, right? That time zone difference that kills us when we're down to number 3 right here. Spent waiting for answers, right? They email me a question, the next day I got an answer, then the next day they're going to address it, right? So that's killing us for sure. How do we tag up much quicker? Number 4, this happened to me a few weeks ago. I was so shocked to see this. Developers are having design reviews without me. What? And the crazier part is that I'm trying to propose we have a design review, but now that this vocab word is already taken, I'm at a loss of what to call a design review of the code when developers are having their own design reviews. So that's maybe a niche problem I just wanted to throw in there for fun. Okay, so kind of a whirlwind of some problems to look for. The bulk of my presentation, I wanted to focus on just kind of the whole product development life cycle, how we document requirements, and most importantly, how are we building those relationships as we go. So most importantly, what makes a good team? This is my absolute favorite YouTube video. It's linked right here for you. I really want you to watch it. I watch it all the time. And I share it in like almost every workshop that I lead at the beginning. So what's cool here, Charles Duhigg shares some research out of Google. Hopefully some of you are familiar with this. Google did a lot of research on what makes up a good team, and their assumptions were completely blown out of the water. If you think about the team makeup, the personality mix, apparently it was none of that. It wasn't a mix of extroverts, introverts. So very surprisingly, it was equality and conversational turn taking, which is Does everyone at the table have an equal say in conversations? And more importantly, have an equal amount of time speaking? It's very important. And it was actually a little bit easier to address this in the pandemic world where all of us are virtual now, right? So remember in the olden days before the pandemic when we were on a conference call, and half of us were in the conference room, right? And so we had maybe 4 or 5 people calling in. Did those 4 or 5 people calling in on the table ever really get to interject any kind of comment? I don't think so. And I was very, after watching this video many times, I was very, very focused on making sure, hey, Sean from Charleston, you haven't said anything in a while. What are your thoughts here? So like I said, the Zoom culture has made this a little bit easier, but it's still very important to think about, especially when we kind of get back to the office. We're all in person again. Number 2, ostentatious listening is the verbal and physical feedback we provide in a conversation, right? The uh-huhs, the head nodding, that it's active listening, right? Active, you can see you have my full attention. And then those 2 in turn create psychological safety, this feeling that I can say anything, there will not be any repercussions, no one will turn me in, it will be received kindly and respectfully, and all of this to me fosters trust, and that's what I look for in teams when we are jamming on some really complex designs, right? We need to have that ability to hear everybody's ideas, right? We need to have everyone share something. And then I always make sure Dev gets, I'm already jumping ahead, Dev gets the last few minutes to share all their feasibility items, which does really kill the innovation, but it's at the end, so it's totally okay. More on that in a minute. But anyway, trust is the big thing, psychological safety. So love Charles Duhigg, love this research. Please check it out. But so you have the good people, have the relationships. Let's go talk about process. Okay, so in my design practice, our work is 12 weeks end to end. We're all full stack designers hired on. So each designer owns all their research and all their design. There is no other design handoffs in our specific format. So the scope of the assignment starts with the feature scoping template that I'm going to show you in just a sec. Then I assume my designer is turning that into a user research test plan, which is essentially just which specific users are we going to and which specific questions are we asking of them off of the feature scoping template. Then I'm expecting a synthesis board after that. And again, all of these are essentially requirements as we're building, right? Then I should see a validated problem statement. Right here is the planning phase where we go, yes, this specific problem statement is what I want to send into Design Studio. Then we have Design Studio, which is every idea ever. We need to capture all those. Every question, every negative comment, every positive comment, right? Then we have our hi-fi mocks, which is generally what people think of as the requirements, right? It's the thing you can see, but there is so much more to that. And then at the end, we have our feature package, which I'll go over. This is what we're kind of formally handing to the developers as they are doing their increment planning and getting that into their backlog. Any questions on this flow we're going to jump into?
I have a question. How do you validate the problem statements?
So that is a result of your user research. Great question.
Oh, okay.
So in your test plan, you have all your questions, you have your assumptions laid out. So then when you go talk to users, you're either validating the problem that you thought it was, or it's something totally different. And the problem statement is a kind of final, beautiful package, and I'll show you that format.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, so step 1, feature scoping. Got to know what we're going to work on this increment, right? So a few elements of a feature scoping. package, we just use Word. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, who are my users? And specifically at Boeing, like what programs are they on? Because we want to mix, right? For example, MOM, we call it MOM, Manufacturing Operations Management. It's a global product, right? So typically, I'm going to need to see defense type of users and commercial type of users always. So again, that compounds all the time, all the timeline, everything. Oops. Okay. Users tasks. What are the users tasks? So my approach to user-centered design is very, very task-focused. If you've been in any of my other UW workshops, you've experienced that. But essentially, at Boeing, we are working on internal productivity tools, right? Those big enterprise enhancement products. So it really is all about how the users get a job done. But of course, this is applicable to shopping for yoga pants, right? Buying shoes, purchasing, or how your webcam works. It would be, what would it be like? See if there are any bad guys in my driveway tonight, right? That would be the feature scope probably for a home video security camera. And so like I said here, this is where all the assumptions start, right? We don't know for sure what's going on with our users just yet, but I assume I have some SMEs I'm probably working with who they kind of know, right? So they're going to tell me what they think. I'm going to make it all laid out as assumptions. And this is a way to honor the PMs that have essentially an ego stake in the solution and the problem. Maybe they're very experienced in this area, so they really know what's going on. But we still need to get our hands in there, right? And just really make sure no assumptions are going to be projected forward, because that's the risk, right? That's our job, is to reduce the risk of the software and all the software issues on launch, right? So this is our way to honor those deep experiences without telling them, sorry, your experience isn't really welcome here. We need to go see for sure. We really just want to kind of phrase it as, hey, let me go see that your experience is applicable across the whole company. That's all we want to do, and typically that's well received. So yeah. Okay, where were we? Research goals. What do we want to learn today? That's another great way to talk to your PMs in terms of, hey, what don't you know? What don't you know? That's where I'll focus, right? If you have a clear vision of this feature, don't put me on it at all. I'm just making this prolonged when maybe you don't need to. So that's another really good conversation I'm having with my PM at all times is, are you assigning me to the highest risk item and the highest unknown item? So this is where also then the ego is removed a little bit, because then they can truly honestly say, I don't know this area, so I want you to go research more. And that's, I think, where the collaboration really gets good. Success measures, again, that's another really advanced thing. It's a lean UX principle that we're trying to get better at. I'm not the expert in this area, but essentially I want to start getting my design practice comfortable with how are we measuring our success of this product. Existing solution alternatives. Again, this is not the time to be talking about solutions, but I find that a lot of people at this point still have ideas. So I want to have a parking lot to just store them. People can see we are listening to them, but we know, it's not the right time. We're not in a design studio yet. I haven't even synthesized anything, but it makes them feel better to see their ideas somewhere, and similarly with potential solution ideas. I'm not thinking about solution at all right now, but people just are. That's how human brains work. So just having a nice parking lot for them. When you get to design studio, bring that stuff back in. Good stuff. I plug in all of my Insight stickies to a specific process step. And then along the side, I'm going to notate the severity. So for the very last technical review I did for the defense programs in Puget Sound, I had, and these are all, at your discretion, right? But I had severe usability issues, procedural inconsistencies, so things that I can't speak to, right, as a business, but I'm seeing users do a lot of different things, so they need to figure it out. And then like annoying UI things, like the thumbnail was uploaded with weird graphics next, like a weird icon next to it. Things that the users can obviously overlook, but they just annoyed me or annoyed a user. So once we have that kind of matrix, then I start putting all the stickies down. So now I'm starting to see on this specific process step, where were the big issues? And of course, hopefully you know, or you will learn soon, the big issues are easily just the ones that the most of the users spoke to having a problem with it or having an inconsistency. I saw an inconsistency. So from there, we're over here on this right-hand side. You'll see like blue, orange, green, yellow. That's 4 users that said something in whatever theme this is. Then I like my designers and my design practice. I want one sentence that summarizes the stickies. I don't want a one-word theme. I want one sentence. Because again, you're essentially telling me where are all the big problems. I don't even really care about what was great about it. I actually have, that's not even on the screenshot. It's like over to the right, like things that were great, cool. We can put on like the first PowerPoint slide in the report out. But I don't really care about that because they were good, yay, high five. What we want to do is address all the issues, right, and enhancements. So that's that top right corner here. And then we did, at the end, wrapper it with what is the UI screen that we want to, that it was related to, right? Because again, we need to eventually go to a developer and say, hey, on this screen, this is an issue. Here's how we're changing it, right? Again, we're hopefully wrapping in requirements, documentation. Okay, then on what we do, we take those, essentially just write them up on the left-hand side. And that left-hand column is where we are presenting to the dev lead and the product manager. So we're saying, hey, in this area, we believe these are bugs. These definitely need to be fixed. We told dev to do it this way. It doesn't look like this right now. The next thing is usability must-have, again, on this specific synth board. So these were items that we said, hey, you really, really, really need to fix these. These are going to impact your user adoption. And to Boeing, that's lost productivity dollars. For Lululemon, that could be lost, dollars in the bank from selling yoga pants. And then you'll also notice on the right here, we were taking notes on the decisions, right? Because we are not here really to provide our opinions. We're here to provide data. We want the PM, really, product owner, to be making those decisions together with, dev lead is kind of sharing feasibility of a potential change if we're that far in. But, we're just here to say, this is what we observed. These are the issues we saw. What do you guys want to do? And for the newbies, that's where I'm mentoring you in removing that personal attachment to a design feature, a particular problem. When we say, the decision is not mine, I'm here to provide the data, here it is. I think generally the designers get along a little bit better. And then obviously if you're doing usability tests, you hopefully have a use score, a system usability scale score on the bottom. We'll present that as well. But synthesis, again, in summary, we're getting into the planning piece, right? Here are all our findings. Okay, what do you want to address? These are the initial nuggets. Now we're going to go in, put it in our backlog, but then also get a problem statement crafted. Any questions here on synthesis? Okay, so you've worked with your PM on which ones they accept, which ones they agree with you are big problems. Oh my gosh, 4 users ran into that problem. I can't believe it. We definitely need to fix that. So you may have some sort of backlog. There's a lot of different ways you can track this. So for my design practice, we track our items in a Kanban. The specific one is GitLab. You may be able to do it directly in Microsoft ADO, directly in Jira as well. I like this method, because I have two boards. This is my research board, and I also have a design board. What's cool about this is you'll notice assumptions and research questions are first. So those are our initial conversations, like we mentioned earlier in the sprint. And then as we get farther on down the line, the strongly validated insights are what we just presented to PM. So once they've accepted those, you'll notice we tag them with design backlog. So now it goes from a, this is what I found, to this is what I'm going to go address. This is what I'm going to solve for, right, and design. And this tag here actually shows up as my design backlog on my design synth board. I don't have a screenshot of that for you. That's just essentially WIP, right? Design backlog, what am I working on, what I do. And that is another great way to keep your PM focused on you as a human being can only work on one thing at a time. I've had PMs before who are trying to ask me to do 3 things at once. And the Kanban is a great, great, great way to help them visualize that, no, you cannot work on 3 things at once. Pick your top priority item. I don't care what it is, right? I'll do a different one every day, right? Again, that's that personal attachment. Remove that. But what they want me to work on today, business requirements are always, always changing. So that's why it's a great idea to have daily or every other day tag-ups with your PMs. Anyway, that's your design board, your design backlog. Once those have been accepted, now we can go work on the first one in our design sprint. Boom, design sprint. So it's important to note at this stage, I don't have the problem statement right here. Maybe we should go to it right now. Let's go ahead a little bit. Problem statement. So this is your design sprint prompt. This is essentially all I need to give everybody enough of a context of the user research I've done without totally ransacking the hour I've allotted for a quick design studio. You know, I really want to spend the most time designing in a design studio. So this is a really nice, it's like a paragraph essentially, right? I'm proving I have observed something of importance from the users and why it was happening that way. What's the current state, and most importantly, what was that desired outcome we validated? I actually usually have that plugged in first, so kind of go halfway down, because again, we don't care about what the solution was or should be because we haven't even got design studio, right? And a lot of people try to sneak in solutions at this stage before you even get to design studio. If you're accidentally sneaking in designs, here's a quick, great way to tell if you've snuck in designs in your problem statement. Again, my PMs are very guilty of this. If there's only one clear solution to your problem statement, you've snuck in a solution in your problem statement. I really want, if you remember anything from this presentation, I will repeat it. If you only have one obvious solution after you read your problem statement, you have accidentally snuck in a solution idea in your problem statement. And why is that so important? Because what's the point of Design Studio? It's to get the most ideas ever, right? Go for quantity, right? Our design thinking values, go for quantity, get all the stupid ideas out first, then launch beyond that, then jump off of other people's ideas, right? If your problem statement says, make a search results page, okay, well then everyone's gonna go make a search results page and then we're done and we're like a half hour of time back. So that's just a little tip, something I'm always looking out for, why I wanna make sure I got the desired outcomes written in first, because that's typically the place you're gonna see people sneaking in solution ideas. And then the how might we, that's your design prompt essentially, right? So you've got the context on the top here, and then you have a how might we solve this problem essentially, and then maybe some success measures there. So that's all I bring to a design studio. Let everyone have at it here, do some sketches, have a great time. After we have the designs done, I'm not speaking on, iterating on your design. prototype testing your design, I assume you've done all that. Getting to let's document our requirements formally. You probably have a lot of this in your notes by this point, or in InVision or in Sketch, Figma, whatever. But essentially, like I just mentioned, the problem statement really is that main overview of what you're about to present. And again, it's just a really nice context setting for developers. It's nice and concise. It's not a bunch of pages. It's just a really nice chunk of information. Of course, you're highlighting who your users are, what their tasks are in scope, and hopefully you're starting to notice that the task is going to be broken down into scenarios, and then that's how your UI designs are sliced. Of course, the mocks are going to be in this feature package, and then the specific text notating the functions. Anyone have any questions on the overview of the feature package? I'm going to go into detail on each one. All right, doing good on time. So number one, user roles. I'm not a fan of personas in general, and it may just be probably because my design space is very I don't know, it's very mature, right? I don't have a lot of brand new users who don't have any exposure to the process they're working on. I think we call that evolutionary design as opposed to revolutionary design. These are brand new end users. You're doing a lot more discovery type of research and basically finding users. So mine are all very, very set in stone. That probably is what's feeding into my views on personas being a little overkill for my specific type of work. So essentially, I just have the role. I don't spend too much time on this. Don't have a lot of fun with it. We don't even typically have a picture. I kind of made the picture for you guys. But it's essentially, again, not surprisingly here, what are their main tasks? Hopefully you have a nice little journey map established by this point. Miro has a lot of really beautiful templates. This is from Miro. Love it. Essentially, what are they doing first? What are they doing second? And this really helps you find those UI elements that I find we typically forget. So when you have a more thorough journey map and scenario breakdown, you're going to have a lot better handle on addressing the developer's what if questions. I don't know if any of you have experience working with developers yet, but when you hand off your designs, they'll typically start with, what if the user does this? What if the user does this? What if the user does this? And, we hope we have all those scenarios already accounted for, right? So that's why it's a great idea to make sure, I forgot to mention, the developers are included in Design Studio, right? The PMs are included in Design Studio. It's a very big team effort. And it's also, I kind of joke, like, it's a fun break in your day from having to code all day. Obviously, that's not my thing, but that's obviously why a developer is a developer. But I just say, hey, come play for a little bit, take a break. Also, because that's the perfect time for them to speak to the feasibility. I don't want to get into hi-fi mocks and then learn that it's not feasible. I want to know when I'm in Sketch, right? Okay, we already spoke to problem statement, but here's your Lean UX template. And then we're just breaking it down farther, right? Breaking it down into more and more detail level. So the next level from feature level is a scenario, right? And these are what essentially are starting to set up what types of UI designs do I need? How many screens do I need, right? So you're going to start with your trigger for action. There are a few expected steps these are going to perform, and then you have your desired outcome. Again, what I want to continue to belabor is nothing solution should be written into this. And why that's so important is because the solution changes and evolves, right? We start from a piece of paper form, right? And then we go to Google Forms. The trigger for action and the steps don't really change. And that's what I kind of want to separate. So I have those separated. So I just want to run through this scenario with you. A quality inspector receives an assignment. They're going to go out to the product. And I want to go get some part information. That's my job today, gather part information. Notice I didn't mention anything about RFID scanning. writing anything down on paper. It's really about what's the outcome. User is notating serial number, notating manufacturing date. Again, no RFID mention, no solution, paper, pencil. Really want that to be solution agnostic because, again, if you say RFID scanner, that locks in your design studio to, okay, I need to use a RFID scanner. But what if there's something even better than an RFID scanner? I don't know. So I want that to be very agnostic. Desired outcome, I've successfully captured all the required data. And the required data should very clearly be notated right here for you on my UI design. You can see serial number, manufacturing date, expiration date, and cage code. That should definitely be written in your scenario. I didn't have any room here. This is my beautiful mobile design. Okay, from scenario. So if you think of this UI design as maybe one to a few scenarios, now we need to break that down into user stories, which can typically mention just an even smaller piece of the UI design, right? But I hope I've made it clear that the UI design stems from a scenario, but feeds a user story. So I don't want to see any user stories written until I have the UI design validated. Because the user stories are simply this chunk of UI, this chunk of UI, this chunk of UI, throw it over the fence kind of deal. So if you're not familiar with the Gherkin language, it's essentially given when then. It's a very easy language for the developers to understand when we're breaking down a UI design into code. Because it speaks to the preconditions, it speaks to all the user actions that we need to support, then it speaks to specifically what part of the UI design needs to be coded. And we'll typically say, you'll see here on here, per mock. So do these things, go look at the UI design for this, the rest. So given I'm near the product, so every precondition ever, and this is, again, typically where your developers are contributing. What about this? What about this? What about when the user's in this situation? Oh, I totally forgot that. Right, so this is where you definitely want to go back and forth with your developers a lot before that official due date. I have due dates at the end of my program increments. So they're going to help make sure I don't have any holes. And I've been with PMs before. We kind of do a pre-PI planning where we look at the user stories initially first, and that gives us that window to fill in the holes that the developers, that's what they like doing. They like poking holes. Okay, now's your chance to really speak to the solution. When I hold the RFID scanner next to the desired part and I pull the scan trigger, then these things are going to show up on the UI: serial number, manufacturing date, expiration date, cage code. Those will be on the display. See the mock to see exactly how they display. I'll maybe notate, padding, color if we need to, right? That's where you're going to start notating those very, very specific items on your mock. Then if you're in a really mature design practice, really following Lean UX closely, I think I might have this out of order a little bit. Essentially, the solution hypothesis is we have the design done. This is our hypothesis to see if this is what the user actually needs. So this would probably actually be in the prototype testing phase, a little bit out of order here. But sometimes we do usability testing after it's gone to code, after it's launched, right? More in the user acceptance, farther down. Maybe not. I didn't mean launch. Push to the test environment. All right. So in summary, a few things to look out for and a few enablers. When the user stories are not as detailed as dev needs, make sure you're bringing them in a lot more frequently in your process to get their feedback, to make sure you're filling in those holes early. Also, make sure they're coming to your design studio, at least one. You don't have to have the whole dev team there, right? But at least one to come have some fun, build a relationship, get their perspective on how the design's going. When the designs are mismatched between what you handed off and what got coded, that typically means your feature requirements handoff wasn't as good as it should have been, or you had a lot of holes that the developer felt they had to fill in the blanks in your absence or in your time zone difference or whatever. And then that time spent waiting on answers, that just kills me. So having a specific dev design pairing scheduled is tricky, right? Because if they have a question but on Monday, but your meeting's Friday, I think it's more, make sure you're clearly telling them that you're very open to having meetings when they need it, whether that be at 8 p.m. at night every once in a while, 8 a.m. every once in a while, right? Kind of just making sure you're being a good team player, but also clearly communicating, hey, I don't want to go over this with you via email because I'm sure it will be quicker to just hop on the phone or sit next to each other. But we're kind of in a pandemic right now. Okay, and then finally, PM collab. When they're not allowing enough time for us to do user-centered design, you have to evangelize. You have to set expectations. This is what it's going to take. I just sent you a 12-week example, if that's kind of what your cadence is. But I would take the time to draw out what your cadence is and how user-centered design can fit into that. But doing it right? I'm always harping on my junior designers. We got to do it right. You have to do it right. When you cut corners, PMs expect that timeline into perpetuity. So if you're skipping user research or prototype testing or whatever in the beginning, well, then when you try really hard in a few months to do it, they're like, well, it's never taken you this long before. Like, why is it taking you so long? So, really set expectations right from the beginning. When products are sliced by solution functions, really bring the team back to that journey map, making sure the product roadmap is user task-centric, problem-centric, not solution-centric. And then when your teammates are not participating in user research, just simply invite them. The build's teaming. It's always a lot of fun. I love my job. I hope you guys do too. Always the more the merrier in design studios, in user research. I find that most end users are not bothered by 5 people on a Zoom call. Even when, us researchers kind of think, oh, so many people watching is going to fluster them, I think they immediately kind of forget you're there. So I've not seen a problem with that. Or record it, right? Ask if they're okay with recording it, and then any of your PMs can watch later. Or I haven't had the time to do this, but showing a clip in a research report really speaks volumes to some of the problems if people aren't listening to you, right? So always make sure everyone's invited. And yeah, hopefully that's a good team and solid requirements, and hopefully your designs are coded as you expect them to. Thanks for your time, everyone. I think we have a few minutes for questions.